Welcome! Before we begin, find a comfortable position. Adjust your pillows. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Unclench your jaw. Tonight, we are leaving the noise of the modern world behind. We are traveling to the edge of the map, to a place where the land ends and the vast dark ocean begins. Imagine a tall stone tower standing alone on a rugged cliff. The air is cold and carries the scent of salt and ancient stone. The only sound is the rhythmic, hypnotic crashing of waves against the rocks below. This is the world of the lighthouse, a world of solitude, of precision, of quiet dedication. For the next hour, we will explore the slow history of these structures. We will learn about the geometry of their lenses, the chemistry of their lamps, and the quiet lives of the keepers who watched over them. There is no rush. There is nothing you need to remember. Just let the story wash over you, like the tide coming in, slowly and steadily. In the long, quiet story of human travel across the sea, lighthouses rise like patient markers. They do not speak, they do not move. They only stand, year after year, looking out over water. Their purpose is simple. They guide sailors. They warn of rocks. They say, in a slow and steady way, you are here, and danger is there. Ancient lighthouses were not built for beauty. They were built for need. Still, there is something peaceful in the way they were shaped. Their stones were set down one by one. Their fires were tended by hands that worked methodically, without hurry. When we look back at the earliest of these towers, the world seems softer, quieter. The sea rolls, the wind moves, the lighthouse stays still. Among all ancient lighthouses, one is remembered more than the others. That is the Lighthouse of Alexandria. It was also called the Pharos, named after the small island on which it stood. People in the ancient world spoke of it in slow, admiring tones. They said it was tall. They said it was strong. They said it could be seen from many miles away. Some even said it was one of the greatest things ever made by human hands. The Lighthouse of Alexandria rose during the reign of Ptolemy II, around the 3rd century BCE. Its stones were pale, smoothed by the steady effort of workers who likely did not think of fame. The structure was built in 3 main stages. At the bottom was a large square base. It was wide and squat, resting in a confident way against the ground. The builders used light-colored limestone, a stone that sat calmly under the sun, warming slowly through the day. The limestone blocks fit together with care, forming a surface that was not perfectly smooth but still even. The faint ridges of the blocks created a gentle texture, something like the pattern of slow-moving waves. Above the square base stood an octagonal section. This middle part rose straighter and slimmer. The 8 sides gave the lighthouse a subtle rhythm. If a person walked around it, each turn would feel the same as the last, like stepping through repeated shapes. Visitors might have run their hands along the stone, feeling the coolness on their palms, hearing the soft scratch of rougher areas. Limestone ages at an even pace. Wind softens it. Salt air settles into its pores. The result is a surface that carries time quietly. The topmost part of the lighthouse was cylindrical. It held the fire, the reason for the tower's existence. Ancient descriptions say that there was a large mirror, likely made of polished bronze, placed near the flame. The fire itself burned steadily through the night. Workers used wood brought from the mainland, carried across the narrow water. The wood was probably pine or cedar, Trees common to the region and easy to light. Pine, when burned, releases a slow crackling sound. Cedar burns with a steady glow. Both would have produced a warm, reaching flame. The keepers fed the fire carefully. They would have walked up long ramps or climbed many stairs inside the lighthouse. Inside, the air must have been dim, the light of torches shaking softly against the walls. The stone interior would have been cooler than the air outside. Footsteps would echo at a low, calming pitch. When workers reached the top, they stepped into a place where air moved more freely, where the scent of smoke drifted out over the sea. The fire had to be tended without interruption. When the fuel burned low, the flame shrank. When the flame shrank, the light reached less far. So the keepers kept adding wood, feeding the fire in small, simple motions. There was no rush, only the steady task of keeping the flame alive. The Lighthouse of Alexandria is said to have reached somewhere between 100 and 130 meters in height. That would have made it one of the tallest structures of its time. But the exact height is not the important part. What matters is how it must have looked to sailors. Imagine a quiet night at sea. The boat rises and falls with slow, patient waves. The horizon is dark, the wind is soft. Then, far away, a small glow begins to appear. It is not sharp. It is not bright in a harsh way. It is a distant, steady shine. As the boat continues, the glow rises higher. The Lighthouse of Alexandria appears like a calm, distant star sitting on a stone pillar. Today, the lighthouse no longer stands. Time, earthquakes, and weather brought it down. But in its age, it showed people what a lighthouse could be. It became the model for others. Another ancient lighthouse that still endures today is the Tower of Hercules in present-day Spain. Unlike the Lighthouse of Alexandria, the Tower of Hercules never fell completely. It has stood through many centuries. It is older than most structures that remain in regular use. It is quiet, solid, and persistent. The Tower of Hercules was built by the Romans, likely in the 1st century CE. The Romans were careful builders. They liked order. They liked repetition. They liked stone that could endure both time and weather. For the tower, they used granite and other local stone. Granite has a firmness to it. When touched, it feels dense and cold. Its surface does not crumble easily. Instead, it stays hard. Rain smooths it over the centuries, but slowly. The stones of the tower were cut and carried by hand. Workers shaped them with tools made for precise, patient work. Each blow of the tool created a small scratch or uneven patch. But when all the stones were placed together, the face of the tower looked steady. The Romans stacked the stones in rows that line up almost perfectly. The seams between them were straight and controlled. This careful building method made the lighthouse feel grounded, as though it grew naturally from the rock beneath it. The original Roman structure was simpler than the lighthouse seen today. The tower has been restored over time, but the core remains ancient. Inside, a spiral path slowly climbs upward. The steps are not rushed. Their pattern is slow and predictable. As one walks inside, the sound of one's own footsteps repeats in a soft rhythm. The air is cool, and the stone walls make every sound gentle and muted. Like the Lighthouse of Alexandria, the Tower of Hercules also used fire as its guiding light. The fuel for this fire would have been wood as well. Roman wood supplies often included pine, oak, and other sturdy timbers. Pine bark carries resin with a sticky scent. When pine burns, the resin helps create a bright, lasting flame. Oak burns more slowly, offering a deeper glow. Workers likely mixed whatever wood was available, choosing the pieces that burned long into the night. The process of carrying wood up the tower required steady labor. It was not fast, it was not urgent. Workers likely used simple tools: leather straps, bundles, and baskets. They would take the wood up the interior path, feeling the rough walls brush lightly against their shoulders. When they reached the top, they would place the wood carefully, adding it to the fire in slow practice motions. The fire at the top of the Tower of Hercules did not need to be large. It only needed to be clear. The Roman world valued lighthouses for their usefulness, not their size. A small flame, high above the water, could guide sailors safely. The reflections would flicker across the sea in wide, soft arcs. In the distance, sailors would see a glow that did not dance too wildly. It simply continued, like a patient hand pointing the way. Construction of the Tower of Hercules was a process of time and repetition. Ancient building methods had no machines. Stones were moved by lever and rope. Workers shifted them inch by inch. Each block was set carefully. The building rose one level at a time, each addition depending on the strength of the one below it. Days passed slowly. The sound of chisels and hammers echoed, but not in a rushed way. The builders knew that speed was less important than stability. When a wall was finished, they stepped back, looked at it quietly, and then began the next stage. Over many months, perhaps years, the lighthouse grew until it reached the height the Romans desired. And then it stood. The purpose of the tower was simple. It was there to guide ships approaching the coast of Galicia. That part of the sea could be unpredictable. The waves broke against the rocks in a slow but powerful rhythm. The lighthouse watched over them, steady and unconcerned. What makes these ancient lighthouses so calming to imagine is not only their shape or their stone. It is the way they fit into the landscape of their time. They rose from the earth slowly. Their stones were placed with care. Their fires burned because workers kept them burning. Nothing happened quickly. Nothing happened with noise or hurry. The lighthouses simply existed, performing the same quiet task day after day. Even now, when we think of these structures, we imagine them in stillness. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, tall and pale, with its fire whispering into the night air. The Tower of Hercules, solid and enduring, its granite softening gently in the sea breeze. They do not call to mind excitement or drama. They call to mind steadiness. They call to mind the slow work of human hands. As the waves moved, these lighthouses remained. As the nights passed, their fires glowed. And as centuries turned, their story stayed, carried onward like a slow tide, rolling gently across time. The story continues quietly, many centuries later, when lighthouses were still standing, still watching, still doing the same slow work. By the early 19th century, the towers themselves had not changed very much. Stone was still stone. Stairs were still stairs. Fires still burned at the top. But inside the lantern rooms, something new began to appear. It was made of glass. It was shaped with care. It bent light in a more thoughtful way. In 1822, a French engineer named Augustin Jean Fresnel introduced a new kind of lens. It was not loud in its arrival. It did not demand attention. It simply solved a problem that had existed for a long time. Traditional lighthouse lights wasted much of their glow. Light scattered. It drifted upward, outward, and inward without direction. Fresnel's idea was to gather the light, guide it, and send it forward in a controlled path. The Fresnel lens worked through refraction. Refraction is the slow bending of light as it passes from one material into another. When light moves from air into glass, it changes speed. When it changes speed, it changes direction. This change is gentle. It is not abrupt. The light does not break. It simply turns slightly, following the shape of the glass. Instead of using one thick, heavy lens, Fresnel divided the lens into many separate sections. Each section was shaped like a small prism. These prisms were arranged in concentric circles, spreading outward from the center. Each ring bent the light just a little. Together, they bent the light into a single, steady beam. The glass itself was clear and pale, with a faint green or blue tint depending on its composition. When light passed through it during the day, the lens looked calm and transparent. At night, when the lamp was lit, the glass seemed to wake up. Lines of brightness appeared along the edges of each prism. The concentric circles became visible, like ripples frozen in place. Each prism had to be made with precision. Glass workers melted raw glass and poured it into molds. After cooling, the pieces were removed and shaped by hand. The surfaces were not perfect at first. They were cloudy. They carried small imperfections. To correct this, workers polished the glass slowly, using fine abrasives and water. Polishing was repetitive work. The glass was rubbed against polishing wheels again and again. The sound was soft. The motion was circular. Hours passed. The surface grew smoother. Light passed through more easily. Workers checked the glass by holding it up, turning it slightly, watching how reflections moved across it. When the glass was ready, it had a quiet shine, not sharp, not dazzling. Once polished, the prisms were fitted into a metal frame. These frames were usually made of brass. Brass was chosen because it resisted corrosion from salty air. It also aged gracefully. Over time, brass darkened, developing a muted golden tone. The fittings were thin but strong, holding each piece of glass at exactly the right angle. The concentric rings were assembled one by one. The smallest prisms sat at the center. Larger ones surrounded them. Each ring was aligned carefully. A small mistake in angle could send light in the wrong direction. So the work proceeded slowly. Tools were adjusted, measurements were checked. Hands moved carefully, without haste. When completed, the Fresnel lens looked like a quiet sculpture. It had height, it had depth. It was hollow at the center, allowing the lamp to sit inside. From the outside, the lens appeared complex. From the inside, it felt ordered. Every piece had a place. Every angle served a purpose. Inside the lantern room, the lens was mounted on a platform. Some lenses rotated, creating a rhythmic flash. Others remained fixed, casting a constant beam. The rotation mechanisms were simple but heavy. Gears turned slowly. Weights descended at a controlled pace. The motion was steady and predictable. At the center of the lens was the lamp. Earlier lighthouses had used open fires or simple oil lamps. By the early 1800s, whale oil was common. Whale oil burned cleanly and steadily. It produced a soft yellow flame, but it was expensive and difficult to obtain. It also required long voyages and hard labor far from shore. As the century progressed, kerosene began to replace whale oil. Kerosene was distilled from petroleum. It burned brighter. It was easier to transport. It flowed smoothly through wicks and burners. The transition was gradual. Lighthouse keepers learned how to adjust the lamps, how to trim the wicks, how to control the flame. The lamp sat inside the Fresnel lens like a quiet heart. Its flame was carefully shaped. Chimneys directed airflow. The wick height was adjusted to maintain a consistent glow. Too high, and the flame would smoke. Too low, and the light would dim. The keeper's work was steady and precise. When lit, the light entered the glass prisms. It slowed. It bent. It followed the curves of the lens. Rays that would have scattered upward were redirected forward. Rays that would have been lost were gathered and guided. The result was a beam that reached farther across the water, without needing a larger flame. To a keeper standing nearby, the effect was subtle but noticeable. The lantern room filled with quiet brightness. The glass surfaces reflected small fragments of light. The concentric rings glowed softly. Shadows moved slowly as the lens turned. The air was warm but not oppressive. During the day, the lens rested. Sunlight passed through it gently. Dust settled on the brass fittings. Keepers wiped the surfaces with cloths, moving slowly, carefully. The glass had to remain clean. Even a thin layer of dust could soften the beam. Maintenance was part of the rhythm. Lenses were inspected. Screws were tightened. Polishing continued, even after installation. The glass was treated with respect. It was strong, but it could chip. A single crack could disrupt the light's path. The Fresnel lens did not change the lighthouse's purpose. It did not change the sea. It simply refined the way light moved through space. It made the beam quieter, cleaner, more efficient. Ships still sailed, waves still broke, the tower still stood. For sailors, the light became clearer. It appeared sharper on the horizon. Its rhythm was more distinct, but it was not dramatic. It was reliable. It was steady. It appeared night after night, unchanged. Inside the lighthouse, the lens remained still or turned slowly, surrounded by stone walls and wooden floors. The keeper listened to the wind. He listened to the faint movement of gears. He watched the flame and the glass, making small adjustments when needed. In this way, the Fresnel lens entered history, not with noise, but with precision, not with speed, but with patience. Glass, brass, and light came together in a calm arrangement. The result was beauty that did not demand attention. It simply existed, quietly bending light, hour after hour, across the dark water.